Welcome back. In our last video, we explored reality's malleability. Let's now delve deeper into the role of consciousness in shaping that reality. But what does it mean when we say our consciousness shapes reality? To get a clearer picture of this process, it's best to approach this in what seems to be reverse, starting from observable phenomena, moving to thought and belief, and finally reaching the realm of reality beyond thought. So let's begin. In the previous video, we saw how in quantum physics, consciousness as the observer is pivotal to shaping reality. The mere act of observing collapses the superposition of states into a single state. Simply put, by observing, we collapse the infinite possibilities into a definite observed reality. This phenomena highlights the influence of observation on physical systems, suggesting that consciousness actively participates in the manifestation of reality. These observations can be found in a vast range of experiments that suggest consciousness has an even greater influence on reality, including causality. One such experiment is John Archibald Wheeler's delayed choice experiment, which takes the double slit experiment and focuses it on time. In the experiment, the decision to observe which path is taken by a particle, such as a photon, is made after the particle has already passed through the slits, but before it is detected. Remarkably, the outcome, whether the particle behaves as a wave, showing an interference pattern, or as a particle taking a specific path, appears to be determined by this delayed choice, suggesting that the act of observation retroactively influences the particle's past behavior. This challenges classical notions of time and causality, implying that the observer's decision can affect events that have already occurred. An important takeaway from all this is that time is not linear. Or another way to think about it is that our observations in the present alters our past. Another important inquiry is Alain Aspect's experiments on quantum entangled particles, or particles that remain connected such that the state of one instantaneously influences the state of the other. Aspects showed that observing one particle immediately determines the state of its entangled partner, regardless of distance, seemingly violating classical notions of locality. These experiments suggest that the act of observation instantaneously affects reality across distance and time, implying that consciousness affects what is perceived to be the local physical world. This adds another important piece of the puzzle. Space is not local. We discussed these experiments in other videos, so please hit those subscribe and alert buttons. And in the meantime, I'll also leave a short list of some of these experiments in the description. I hope you enjoy. To understand how all this works and affects our everyday life, we step away from physics and into psychology. In understanding the structure of the human mind, the relationship between the ego and the subconscious has been a central focus for psychology and philosophical inquiry. Sigmund Freud, often considered the father of psychoanalysis, introduced the idea of the mind as a combination of three main components: the ego, the id, responsible for primal desires such as hunger, and the superego, responsible for the ethical judgments. In this model, the subconscious, often referred to as the unconscious, includes parts of both the id and the superego, as well as certain aspects of the ego that are not fully conscious. For ease, we can state that the ego is the conscious, and the id and the superego is the subconscious. According to Freud, the ego is the conscious self, the part of the mind that mediates between our desires and demands of reality. It is responsible for our sense of identity and the decisions we make in our daily lives. The subconscious, however, is a deeper layer of mind, housing thoughts, memories, and desires that are not immediately accessible to the conscious ego, but still influence our behaviors and perceptions. We may have stepped away from quantum physics, but we can see how the relationship between the ego and the subconscious can be seen as synonymous to modern physics. Amit Goswami is a physicist known for his work in the field of quantum consciousness, where he explores the interaction between quantum mechanics and the mind. In his book, The Self-Aware Universe: How Consciousness Creates the Material World, Goswami explains that the ego represents the aspects of consciousness that identifies with the individual self, shaping the way we perceive and interact with the world. The ego's act of observation is what leads to the collapse of the wave function into a specific outcome. The ego in Goswami's framework is responsible for the selective attention that collapses possibilities into definite experiences. Goswami views the subconscious as a storage of potential experiences and unmanifested possibilities, akin to the uncollapsed wave functions in quantum theory. These potentials exist in a state of superposition within the subconscious until they are brought into conscious awareness by the ego, leading to the collapse of these potentials into a specific thought, emotion, or action. When considering how consciousness projects itself into what is perceived as the physical realm, there is no one better to explain this more than the Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung. Carl Jung's exploration of the collective unconscious and archetypes significantly enhance our understanding of consciousness as thought and belief. First, let's explore archetypes, which are central to his theory of the collective unconscious. According to Jung, archetypes are universal primordial symbols and themes that reside within the collective unconscious of all humans, transcending individual experience. In personal experiences, archetypes emerge in dreams and fantasies, offering insight into the underlying structures of the psyche. Culturally, they appear in myths, legends, and artistic expressions, reflecting common themes and symbols across different societies. Archetypes play out within our everyday lives in numerous ways, influencing our thoughts, behaviors, relationships, and cultural expressions. For example, the persona or the social mask we wear. At work, a person might adopt a professional demeanor, while with friends they might be more relaxed and informal. The shadow, representing repressed aspects of the self. The anima animus, being the inner feminine masculine. And the self, or the unification of the conscious and the unconscious mind. These archetypes also transcend into the personas, such as the hero, or the archetype of overcoming challenges and achieving personal growth. Or it can be the rebel who challenges authority and seeks to change the status quo, questioning rules, advocating for change, and striving for social or organizational improvements. By understanding these archetypal influences, we gain insight into the deeper, often unconscious forces that shape human experiences and cultural development. The collective unconscious is a deeper layer of the unconscious mind, shared among all people, containing these archetypes and shared memories from our ancestral past. Unlike the personal unconscious, which is composed of individuals' repressed memories and experiences, the collective unconscious holds the universal experiences of humanity. Jung believed that these archetypes are the fundamental component of the human psyche. These deep-seated beliefs and common symbols shape individual experiences and the collective reality. Ideas such as those of Carl Jung assert the view that our experience of reality is mediated by the mind's innate structures, suggesting that our perception of the world is shaped by the cognitive frameworks through which we interpret it. Bernardo Kastrup advances this understanding that reality is fundamentally mental even further, with an idea he refers to as analytic idealism. According to Kastrup, the physical world is a manifestation of this collective consciousness, which he refers to as the universal mind. He posits that what we perceive as the material world is actually a shared mental construct shaped by the thoughts and beliefs of the collective consciousness. This perspective aligns nicely with Jung's ideas of collective unconsciousness, but extends it by suggesting that the entire physical reality is an expression of mental activity at a fundamental level. Kastrup argues that individual consciousnesses are disassociated aspects of the universal mind, akin to whirlpools in a stream. While each whirlpool appears distinct, it is fundamentally made of the same water and part of the same stream. This analogy highlights how individual minds are connected to a larger collective consciousness. This connectedness implies that changes in the collective belief can have immense effects on the physical world, reinforcing the idea that reality is malleable and influenced by mental states. A significant element of Kastrup's philosophy is the idea that by recognizing and aligning with a deeper, connected nature of consciousness, we can access broader insights and creative potentials. Kastrup also uses the analogy of a whirlpool to explain the ego as a localized, temporary manifestation of the universal consciousness, giving the illusion of separation from the whole. Just as the whirlpool eventually dissolves back into the river, the ego too can transcend, revealing our true nature as part of the undivided universal mind. He suggests that our sense of individual identity is a limited perspective and that by transcending this ego-bound viewpoint, we can engage more fully with the universal mind. This process involves a deepening of awareness and an integration of personal consciousness with the larger collective consciousness, leading to a more meaningful interaction with reality. We discuss how we can do this in later videos, so please hit that subscribe and like button. Thank you. Dovetailing quite nicely with this understanding is Donald Hoffman's interface theory of perception. Hoffman's interface theory of perception posits that our sensory experiences are like a user interface, evolved not to present reality as it is, but to facilitate survival. According to Hoffman, what we perceive as reality is a simplified and symbolic representation, designed to help us navigate and survive in our environment, similar to how we see icons on a computer screen. Hoffman states that individual conscious identities are like avatars in a virtual reality game, where the underlying code is not directly perceived by the player. Moreover, Hoffman's work intersects with the notion of consciousness existing outside space-time. He proposes that consciousness is fundamental, and that space-time and physical objects are constructs of conscious agents. This aligns with the idea that our perceptions and experiences are not rooted in a fixed objective reality, but instead emergent properties of a deeper non-physical consciousness. Hoffman suggests that conscious agents interact and create space-time frameworks as a shared interface, similar to how multiple users interact within an internet environment, or as he sometimes states that reality is a vast interacting network of conscious agents, a social network like the Twitterverse. In this framework, by viewing consciousness as the foundation of reality, Hoffman's ideas provide a modern scientific context for understanding how collective beliefs and perceptions shape our experience of the world. In conclusion, we've explored how time is not linear, and how space is not local, and how this reveals that the world we experience is not grounded in a fixed physical structure, but rather as a fluid construct shaped by the collective agreements of conscious entities. Reality in this view is not an objective truth, but a shared creation, continuously created by the perceptions, beliefs and thoughts of those who observe it. Just as in a voting system, where the collective choices determine the outcome, our reality emerges from the collective consensus of conscious agents, each contributing to the world we perceive. In such a system, this understanding begs us to ask the question, what kind of a world are you voting for? In the next part, we will focus on past thinkers that have provided understandings and practical techniques that can help us harness this ability to consciously create and shape our realities. Thank you for joining, and stay tuned.